We're in a summer series called The Teachings of Jesus, and Sammy kicked it off for us last week. Throughout the summer, we shall be looking at some of the different teachings of Jesus, what Jesus taught, and then what it means for us as followers of Jesus. This morning, this is a sermon that I have been thinking about for quite a long time. Elements of the sermon I've been thinking about from the very, very beginning of Awaken, which was about 15 years ago. So a lot of these ideas have been rattling around inside of my head for quite a while, putting it all together here for you this morning. And what I want to do, here's the sermon title, and when you see the sermon title, you know exactly where this sermon is going and what we're going to be talking about. But I have two goals here, which I'll share in a moment. Sermon title: Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. I want to take another stab at this idea of forgiveness. I feel like this is an annual, event, an annual topic that we revisit from time to time. And this morning, two things that I hope to accomplish here. First, what I want to do is I want to give you a lens through which to understand the process of forgiveness. I want to offer some thoughts, some ways of looking at the idea of forgiveness that have been helpful for me throughout the years. And actually, this, as I said, the sermon has elements from 15 years in the making, but there's a lot that I've been thinking about quite recently, and my interactions with people and what I'm experiencing and what's helping me with this process of forgiveness, because forgiveness is not simply a one-time event, but it's a process and it can take time. And so I want to give you a lens to help you understand that process. But then also, there's a second part to this sermon. What I want to do is I want to offer an invitation for each of us to take steps in our own individual personal growth, spiritually, emotionally, mentally. And so we'll get to both of these as we work our way through this sermon. Now, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. It's first of the last 7 words of Jesus on the cross. The final words of a teacher, of a prophet in the ancient world were very, very important. Dr. Peter Tan says this: ancient Greco-Roman Jewish world's last words were considered a sacred reflection of an individual's ultimate legacy, character, and philosophical integrity. The final 7 words of Jesus, very, very important for understanding who Jesus was, what Jesus was teaching, and how Jesus is leading us to live our lives. This morning, we're going to look at the first of the 7. Here we are in Luke chapter 23. When they came to the place called the Skull, they crucified him there, along with the criminals, one on his right, the other on his left. Jesus said, "Father, forgive them. They do not know what they are doing." Now, this raises a question for us. Who is this them that Jesus is praying for? Let's read that one more time. Forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. Who is it that Jesus is referring to? Who is Jesus praying for? Is it the ones physically carrying out the crucifixion? Well, they didn't know what they were doing. They were just following orders. They were doing what they were told to do. So when Jesus says them, is he simply talking about the people who were nailing him to the cross? Or was he talking about the Roman authorities, the ones who had ordered the crucifixion? Was he talking about Pilate and all the other governing officials, the ones who said, "Put this man on a cross"? The Romans were well known for placing many people, criminals, those who opposed their rule, on the cross. So when Jesus says, "Father, forgive them," well, was he talking about the Roman officials? Or what about the Jewish leaders? Caiaphas, the high priest, all the other leaders who brought Jesus to the Roman officials and said, "Crucify this man. We are opposed to him. He's an enemy of the state. Under your authority, we demand that you crucify him." Was Jesus talking about forgiveness for this religious system that was fearful of who he was and the message that he was bringing? So we have those who physically nailed him to the cross. We have the Roman officials. We have the Jewish leaders. Or what about the crowd? Was Jesus referring to the crowd? All those in attendance who said, crucify him. A week earlier, they were saying, Hosanna, here's our king. Now, a week later, they're saying, crucify this man. We don't want to follow him. We don't believe in him. We are opposed to him. Who is it that Jesus was referring to when he says, Father, forgive them? And I actually already heard the answer from row E. So you have a prize. Come see me later on. I don't know what the prize is, but we'll rifle through the bag here and find something for you. We won't leave you empty-handed. You can go home with a present. You are right. It's all of them. When I think about, Father, forgive them, I read this, and for me, it encompasses every single person that has placed Jesus on the cross. It wasn't one individual. It wasn't simply just one group and everyone else was guilt-free, but rather it was a whole bunch of individuals, a whole bunch of different groups. We could say all of humanity that was complicit in placing Jesus on the cross. Remember, final words in the ancient world were extremely important for understanding someone's legacy and broader message. When I read about Jesus, when I think about his lasting message, what I see written in the Gospels and the New Testament letters is someone of radical forgiveness and reconciliation. Jesus was the picture of the true God in bodily form. If we want to know what the true God looks like, we look to the person of Jesus. So we see what true divinity looks like embodied in a person, embodied in Jesus. But what we also find in Jesus, and this is the important part for us in our lives and our journeys, is we see Jesus embodying the truest way of living. And we talk about this all the time at Awaken, but we see Jesus embodying the true life that brings freedom, peace, salvation, hope to each of our lives. So Jesus embodies what God is like, but then also models for us the truest picture of humanity. For us at Awaken, our mission is to create followers of Jesus because we believe that as we follow Jesus, as we follow his teachings, we will gain a greater understanding of what God is like, and we will also move forward into the greatest, truest version of who God has created each of us to be. Now, let's go back to the first of the final 7 words, our verse, our title, the idea topic that we are looking at, the teaching we're looking at this week. Father, forgive them. They do not know what they are doing. Let's talk about, let's dive into the Greek for a moment, shall we? Yes? All right. Got to make sure you're all tracking, you're all on board here. Now, this word know, remember, they do not know. Now, the word is, I do. Can we all say that? I do. Right, it sounds like you're getting married. And I do, this Greek word, here's a few other ways that it can be translated. It means to perceive, to understand, to see, to be aware. Why don't we reread the verse with some of these different understandings of that word? Father, forgive them, for they do not know. They do not see. They do not understand. They are not aware of what they are doing. Now, there are 3 parts of this that we need to look at this morning for our personal journeys of forgiveness and spiritual growth. We're going to break this down into 3 different components. First, we have the unaware offender. We have all experienced this in our lives. We have all come across unaware offenders. We ourselves have been unaware offenders, I'm sure, from time to time, but we'll get to that in the 3rd component when we talk about you. Let's first talk about you being the one who has been offended. The unaware offender offends through offhand comments, ignorant remarks, maybe we could say unaware remarks that just they get under your skin. You walk away or you're talking to the person and you just, you can feel your blood begin to boil a little bit. What about well-intentioned words that have unexpected reactions? Remember, this is the unaware offender. So there's someone who is trying to offer a critique in a positive way, but they don't land the plane well. Like they run out of runway. You ever experienced this before? Where someone's trying to offer helpful words and you're like, please, just don't even try. And you walk away, you're like, I know that they meant well, but just the way they said it, or the word they used, or the timing of it, or just their face. You all have people like that. I know you all do, because I do in my life as well. It's a part of being human. The unaware offender also they perform actions that have unintentional consequences. They do things, they're totally unaware of what it is that they're doing. You all know people who are just, seems like they're completely oblivious to life and to how their actions cause a reaction in other people. I would say this for the unaware offender. The offender is blind or unaware, we could say unable to see how their words, their actions affect someone else. This is the first level we'll be looking at this morning. And your response to the unaware offender, it can range anywhere from simply annoyance, like, that's just Bob being Bob. All right, Bob's always going to be that way. Or it can go to the other extreme, which is festering bitterness. So when you are offended by someone who is unaware, you could simply be annoyed and you kind of brush it off a little bit. Maybe you think about it a little bit. Or it can create this bitterness that simply festers in your heart and gets deeper and deeper as the times that you've encountered that person go on. Now, if it's on that early part of annoyance, well, sometimes it can be easily resolvable. And we've all had these moments. You have a friend, and the friend says something to you. Like I've had many friends like this. They'll say something to me, and it bothers me. It gets under my skin. This is someone that I care about, someone that I'm in some sort of a relationship with. And so I call them up, or we go out to coffee, or we sit down and we say, hey, when you said that, I'm not really sure I knew exactly what you meant by this, but it's bothering me. And you talk it out. And then 5 minutes later, you hug it out and everything's okay. Like you shared a meal together and you can walk away knowing, all right, they understand a little bit. Maybe they don't fully get it, but at least we can come to some sort of an agreement. And I can forgive them because they didn't really mean the way that I took it. So some of these, they're easily resolvable. But then when you get to the festering bitterness, it's like this. What it feels like. You know that Apple spiral death wheel? Where you pull your computer, and if you don't have an Apple, you're trying to watch Netflix and that circle just keeps rolling and rolling and rolling and it doesn't pick up the Wi-Fi, it won't load the movie, and you're sitting there and you're waiting and waiting and still waiting and it never loads. See, that's what bitterness will do within your heart. It just lingers. It festers. And you keep it right there. But no matter how many conversations you've had with that person, they still don't seem to get it, or they just dig themselves a little bit deeper. You ever have this happen before? Because I've had this happen multiple times before. I have a conversation with someone who's hurt me, who's offended me. I go to talk to them about it, and you walk away, and it's even worse than it was before. Apple spiral death wheel. Like, why are we continuing to do this? And you become more angry, more bitter, more upset, more unforgiving, more resentful, all the nasty things in life that you really don't want. Well, here is some wisdom that I am learning as to how to deal with the Apple spiral death wheel offender so that bitterness and resentment don't continue to work their way deep into the crevices of your soul. Sometimes the unaware offender will never be able to understand, perceive, be aware, have the depth or the maturity to see how their words or actions negatively affect another, or specifically you. The sooner you come to understand this, because I have seen this in my life, the sooner you come to trust this, the lighter you will feel as you walk through life. And the less resentment, bitterness, unforgiveness, call it soul rot, soul death, you will carry within your heart. Because what happens when we are forcing someone to see something that they don't see, our forgiveness then becomes conditional to an awareness that will never come. And now our forgiveness for that offender, for that other person, is tied to them doing that which they will never be able to do. And I have found myself here multiple times in life, and the truth is it never goes well. Because what this does, it places you in a prison of your own making. It's been said before, forgiveness is setting someone free and realizing that the prisoner has been you all along. So forgiveness is setting someone free and realizing that you are the one being set free, that you are the prisoner in the whole situation. So see, what happens is you have that unaware offender, and some of them, easily resolvable. You have a relationship, you go back years, that's fine. But for some people, your forgiveness, it's conditional to something that they will never be able to do or to see. So that's the unaware offender. Now, Jesus, Matthew 18. I mean, this happens all the time in life. Peter came to Jesus and asked, Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me? Up to 7 times? Like, come on, there's got to be a cutoff. Like, forgiveness has to have an end. They've done this thing 7 times. They've had the same comment. I've told them 6 times, hey, please do not say that. That bothers me. Please don't use that word. Please, let's not talk about it now. Like, after 7 times, come on, they're cut off from forgiveness, right? And Jesus is like, well, I tell you not 7 times, 77 times, which basically means keep forgiving. Because you are setting yourself free as you forgive. You're not holding them in prison. They're going and living their unaware life somewhere else, not being bothered by you at all, and you're the one who can't sleep at night. Now, let's move forward to the aware offender. Because we have the unaware offender, but what about the aware offender? And notice, I put this in quotes. This is someone who causes you intentional harm. And unfortunately, we've all been on the receiving end of this. We all know people, there's people in our lives who intentionally want to do us harm. Whether it's well-placed words, a criticism, particular actions that were meant to inflict pain. The aware offender desires to inflict pain on whether it be you or another person. This is the hardest to forgive. The unaware offender, you can write them off. But this, when someone is intentionally hurting you, this is the hardest person to forgive. So how do we do it? Well, here's what has helped me over the years and what is currently helping me when I come across an aware offender. When I first started Awaken, I started seeing this connection between spiritual growth and human development. And you can read, I don't want to get deep into it because you can get quite psychological if you want, philosophical. You can read a whole bunch of different psychologists. They all have their different models, their pictures of how humans grow and develop from birth all the way and as they mature and grow and develop. And human development, think of it like rungs on a ladder. When you're born, you're down here. And you're coming into the world. And you are connected to the person who gave birth to you. You're trying to figure out the world through them. And then you start separating, creating your own identity. So you move up a rung, then you move up another rung, and you keep climbing the ladder of development and maturity. Well, as I mentioned, there's many models. I want to look at one specific model here this morning. It's the model of spiral dynamics put together by some psychologists, Graves, Beck, Ken Wilber. I first heard about this from Rob Bell about 15 years ago. And spiral dynamics, one model of human development, it helps to explain, for me, I learned about spiral dynamics 15 years ago, and it just opened up a whole new world for me of why people do what they do. Why people are in certain places in their development. This model in particular, but all the models do this, it shows the foundation upon which someone is living and making decisions. And this happens individually, it happens culturally as well. Again, do not want to get too deep into this because we could really take the rabbit trail on this one. Here is spiral dynamics for us. Quick, easy, simple picture. So right here, you have survival. And think about this. If you do not own a home and it was pouring rain last night, a couple weeks ago, we had like these mini bursts that were almost like tornadoes that we were caught in. So we went out for the 4th of July and we saw these dark, ominous storm clouds beginning to move towards us in the distance. And our daughter got really, really freaked out. And we're like, hey, don't worry. Everything's going to be fine. Of course, they're not going to leave us here in the open field knowing that this storm is coming. They must have it on radar. They know exactly when the storm's going to hit. They start shooting off the fireworks. About 5 minutes into the fireworks, all of a sudden, grand finale. They just shoot everything off because they seen that storm cloud coming. Well, as they're shooting the fireworks off, there was a massive burst of wind. The clouds got crazy dark. The rain started coming. Every single person in that field picked up their chair, their blanket, their food, whatever they had with them in the great lawn, and started making a beeline for their car. Survival. You don't care about anything else. You'll leave your food behind. There were tree branches that started cracking. This was, let's get the kids in the car. Who cares if we left anything behind? The only thing that you care about is survival. Now, once you have a home and you have a place of shelter, well, then you start caring about some other things, security. Then you kind of work your way all the way up the ladder of development. But at a base level, survival, if you don't have that, you don't care about any of these other things. And that's kind of how it is. Once you have some security, you then don't care about anything above this until you keep working your way up. Now, let's talk about human development. And I want to read for you a passage from this book, which is not for the faint of heart, I will say. If you want to work your way through this book, I do recommend it, but it's not for the faint of heart. It's called A Brief History of Everything by Ken Wilber. Mind-blowing. This is my copy of it, and the notes on the back of this one, the pages that are dog-eared on it, my goodness, crazy. Let me read for you how human development works and how it relates to the aware offender. Now, if for various reasons there is some sort of repeated and severe trauma during the earlier stages, say in the pre-conventional stages, which would be kind of down to that survival part, during the first 3 or 4 years of life, then here is what tends to happen. Since the center of gravity of the self is at this pre-conventional impulsive stage, aspects of that impulsive self can be split off or dissociated. If this dissociation is extremely severe, self-development will come to a screeching halt. But more often than not, the self will simply limp along down the road, dissociation and all. It will continue to develop. It will continue to climb the basic rungs in expanding awareness, however haltingly or however wounded. It might bleed all over the place, but it keeps on climbing. But an aspect of the impulsive self has nonetheless been split off. That split off aspect does not continue the climb, does not continue to grow and develop. Rather, it sets up shop in the basement and it has a moral worldview of stage 1. Since in this example, this is where the dissociation occurred. It remains at moral stage 1 even as the rest of the self continues to grow and develop. So, this split off aspect is completely narcissistic, egocentric, self-absorbed, and altogether impulsive. It continues to interpret the world within the categories available to it at that primitive or archaic stage. As the main blob of the self glops on up the ladder, this little blob remains behind, sabotaging the main self with neurotic or even psychotic symptoms. The main blob is getting higher and wider view of the world, but the little blob is committed to itself only. Narcissistic, archaic worldview, its pre-conventional impulses and needs. And the internal conflict between the main blob, which now might be at a moral stage 3, 4, 5, well, the internal conflict between the main blob and the little blob of stage 1 can be devastating. This is not an external conflict, it's a civil war. And that, by any other name, is pathology. So what happens is, as we're growing, as we're developing, when we experience some sort of trauma in our lives, as we are maturing and developing, there's a piece of us that stays stuck at that lower level of development. Then we begin to react out of fear, out of self-preservation. Because when something happens that creates stress or anxiety, something that we feel out of control over, we revert back to that earlier stage of being. It's been said, well, that person then is acting from a place of fear, trauma, or pain. It's been said, hurt people hurt people. So there might be an offender who is aware of what they're doing. They're causing intentional harm to you or to someone else, but in reality, what they're doing is they're operating from their pain. They're lashing out from previous ways in which they've been hurt before. And the truth is, we all do this because we've all experienced, call it trauma, different levels of trauma as we grow and develop. We've all experienced pain in our lives. And when something is uncomfortable, even if we've come to a certain point in our development, there's something that's triggered that's at a lower level of development, and we react from our pain. We react from our hurt. Think about the cross. When Jesus was put on the cross, there were people who put Jesus on the cross because of their own fear. People who put Jesus on the cross because they wanted to preserve their control and their power. And because Jesus was seen as a threat to their power, they lashed out. They reacted. They killed the person that was making them uncomfortable and fearful. Hurt people hurt people. So when you come across the aware offender, you don't excuse the action. That's not what we're talking about. There are real consequences. Of course there are. We see this with Jesus. We see this throughout the New Testament. We see this in how God is described and talked about in the Bible. So when you come across the aware offender, there are real consequences and boundaries must be established. You don't simply just wipe it clean. You don't excuse it and say, well, they just didn't know. No, because there's some great harms and great atrocities that have occurred in your life and that happen in the world every day. You don't just simply say, well, all right, forget about it. No, there are real consequences to the hurt and the pain that people have caused in the world. Now, let me introduce you to Desmond Tutu, Archbishop, South Africa, who worked tirelessly to bridge the gap between the blacks and the whites after apartheid in South Africa. Here's a few quotes from Desmond Tutu about what he learned forgiveness was as he tried to bring everyone together after some great harm had been done because of segregation and apartheid in South Africa. Forgiving is not forgetting. It's actually remembering. Remembering and not using your right to hit back. It's a second chance for a new beginning. Forgiveness does not mean condoning what's been done. Forgiving means abandoning your right to pay back the perpetrator in his own coin. Think about Jesus. Forgive them. Not, Father, would you place them on a cross as well? Would you remove their life from them, but rather forgive them? Jesus is refusing to do to others what others did to him. Forgiveness is the only way to heal ourselves and to be free from the past. Without forgiveness, we remain tethered to the person who harmed us. So when we come across the aware offender, it takes a lot of grit, a lot of maturity, a lot of help from the Spirit to begin to forgive the person in our heart. And we don't simply just say, well, God wants me to forgive, so I forgive it. No, you have to feel the pain. You have to name the pain. You have to explore the depths of the pain that you have been through. That is the only way through and the only way to forgive. And this is what Desmond Tutu realized when he tried bringing an entire nation back together after there were great crimes and atrocities committed by humans against other humans. Father, forgive them. They do not know, they don't see, they don't understand. They are not aware of what they are doing. There's some hurt part within that is lashing out and that is reacting. And the only way that we can begin to heal the trauma and the pain that we in our world have been through is to walk the messy path of forgiveness. To trust that forgiveness, as difficult, painful as it is the healing path forward. The best path forward for humanity as we follow the example of Jesus. Now, I said we'd talk about you. And so the third part of this is you as the offender, because there's been times when we have made those comments, when we have offered ignorant remarks, or we're unaware of the thing that we said and how it's affected others. There's also been times when we have caused intentional harm to others, where we've lashed out from our pain, the things that we've been through, and we have spoken words intentionally meant to harm and bring pain to others. In Matthew chapter 6, during the Lord's Prayer, part of this Lord's Prayer, this prayer that we are to pray on a daily, even 3 times a day, as many of you hopefully are still doing, forgive us our debts as we also have forgiven our debtors. What this prayer is, it's an awareness of our need for our forgiveness, for the times when we have caused harm to others. This prayer, as we offer these words, as we pray these words, it's an invitation to keep growing ourselves. Sort of like a self-examination. Father, forgive us. Is there anything in my life, any harm that I've caused, any offense in my life that is disrupting the wholeness and the harmony between me and others, between me and you, me and myself? Is there anything within me in need of forgiveness, in need of healing, in need of awareness, so that I can keep walking forward the path that the Spirit is leading me down? And instead of bringing disruption and pain to the world, is there any healing that needs to happen within me so that I can bring wholeness and harmony to myself and to the world around me? Ken Wilber ends, he says, as we'll see, one of the things we want to do in development, remember, spiritual growth connected to human development. One of the things we want to do in our development as we grow, one of the things that Jesus, I believe, wants to do within each and every one of you is to help end the civil wars within. So that we don't lash out from our pain, our past trauma, but rather that we can respond from a place of healing, a place of the Spirit leading us in a way that is good, and a way that is peace-filling for ourselves and for the world. So as we end here this morning, we're going to celebrate Eucharist. We're going to celebrate communion, which is, once again, this continual reminder of the forgiveness of Christ that is upon you. A forgiveness that brings healing, so that you don't have to live with shame. So you don't have to live torn up over your past, where you've been. If there's any shame, any hurt that you are carrying within you, the invitation this morning is to place it at the table. place it at the feet of Jesus, and once again, extend our arms to receive the love and the healing of Christ that says, you are forgiven. See, forgiving is not forgetting. So we name those areas in our lives that need forgiveness. The areas of brokenness that we feel within us, we bring them to the table. We bring them to the cross. We remember them. And then we allow God to bring a new beginning, a fresh start. As we name them, as we remember them and bring them to the surface, we open our souls to receive the healing that only Jesus can bring. So this morning, as you come to the table, is there anything that you need to remember? Is there anything that you need to name? Anything that's been weighing you down, that's been plaguing you? And this morning is your invitation for a fresh start, to receive and to feel the forgiveness and peace that Jesus brings.